Welcome to Garden Wanderlust, where we step through the gates of Britain's most inspiring independent gardens. Join me, Josef Lloyd, and together we'll explore these hidden horticultural gems, meet the passionate people behind them, and uncover the stories that make these spaces so special. Today, I'm visiting the enchanting Bryngwyn Manor in South Wales, a hidden gem that opens to the public as part of the wonderful National Garden scheme. I met with owner Louise Maunder, who began by sharing the origins of the house and garden's name.
So it's Bryngwyn. Bryngwyn means White Hill, but it's not a literal translation. There are various spellings of Bryngwyn through the ages. None of them mean White Hill, and there isn't a White Hill. So, yeah, there is a hill fort, but it's called Camp Fort. So there's a hill fort 2 fields away, but that's not white. So it's not a proper name.
Okay, right. But I did wonder. I was a bit sort of curious as to why it was called that. But now you've cleared it up. Nobody knows. So no, there we are. And
this house wasn't originally called Bryngwyn. Anyway, it was originally called Tutti Frutti, which means big house.
Right.
And so over the ages, as different houses have been built in the area, the older houses have had name changes.
Of course. Well, that would make sense, I guess.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
It's a vibrant area.
It is.
It's always had farming in it, starting off with the monks with their fish farms. This one was linked with the monastic grange of Llantarnam, which is down near Cwmbran. This was originally a fishery for them, so there were monks here from the 11th century, and so the house would have been built up around the ponds to enable farming to take place through the year. So the pond that we're standing in front of is a very deep pond. As I said, it's all fed with natural springs, so it's good clean water. But there is a long lawn in front of us that then leads down to another pond which is much shallower, and under the lawn there are lots and lots of large pipes. And we believe that they grew the carp in the pond in front of us, which is deep, but carp are bottom feeders, and so they have a very muddy taste, and you have to put them into clean water before you farm them. And so they would have let them then swim through the pipes into the second pond, where it would have been clean spring water. And then after a couple of weeks, when they were cleaned from all the mud in the first pond, there's a sluice gate that opens up into the field and then into a subsequent pond in the woodland. And we think they just literally walked around and picked them up, so you can empty the pond completely.
Louise and I then strolled over to where the late flowering snowdrops were in full bloom. We are standing at the very front of the house, and this is where the majority of the snowdrops are, really,
yes.
Aren't they? They sweep across the side of the drive as you come down, and they are absolutely fantastic, aren't they? What a show.
There are early flowering ones and late flowering ones, so we do get quite a good season for snowdrops. There's some very pretty double ones which are very frilly, and I find them quite funny because they look like old-fashioned frilly knickers.
You've got frilly knickers down the drive.
Absolutely, yeah. And it just makes me smile. I think they look very, very funny. We'll go and find some in a minute.
Oh, brilliant.
But yeah, there are thousands of snowdrops, and we're gradually, as we thin out the clumps, because if you don't sort of spread the bulbs out, they stop flowering. So we, every so often, will dig up piles of bulbs, and then we're spreading them out around the garden. So eventually, hopefully, we'll have a snowdrop walk all the way around the garden. So the tree that we're looking at now is a walnut tree, and we actually get a very good crop of walnuts from it if we can beat the squirrels to it. And then next to it is an Indian bean tree, which has the most fantastic perfumed flowers. They smell like a cross between jasmine and vanilla.
What I'm noticing as we walk around is that it's called a manor, and in many respects it's almost like an estate in miniature.
Yes.
The fact that we're sort of standing in this lovely orchard
it's got everything you need, but it's not massive.
No.
It's a good size.
Yes.
And then I've clocked the walled garden, which is just behind us.
Okay.
And again, it's gorgeous, and it's to have a walled garden is fantastic, but it's again quite diddy for a walled garden.
It is, and it's not only fruit. It's designed so that you grow flowers for the house throughout the year, and you grow the fruit and veg for the household.
We wandered into the walled garden, where Louise introduced me to the plants and produce that she cultivates, some with an unexpected twist.
So we're now standing in this, it's just so lovely, walled garden.
So we've got several fig trees here. I'm not an extravagant gardener, and these 2 fig trees were rescued from a skip behind a well-known supermarket.
That's great.
I liberated them to some pots and then put them in, and they've done really well. I've planted them in their pots. I put them in some very large pots, planted them in their pots so the roots are somewhat contained, and we get a most fantastic crop off them.
So when did you plant these? Because they are they're a good size.
Yeah, I've had them about 12 years. So they were in a pot previously, and then when we moved here I put them into the ground. So they've done really, really well, and we get fantastic crop.
So you skip dived for your figs.
Yes, I'm an embarrassment to my family. I find it a lot more fun when you get something that looks like it's not going to make it, and then you get it to recover and get fantastic crops off it. I find that's fun, and it's rewarding.
I couldn't agree more.
I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Brilliant. It's interesting actually looking at the layout here, because it's mainly it's all paved, isn't it?
Okay, so when we moved here it was all pea gravel. If you ever can't get something to germinate, put it in pea gravel, because the paths grew fantastically and the beds didn't grow much. So when we had builders on site, we decided to bite the bullet and pave. It's not maybe the prettiest, but you can wheel a wheelbarrow on it. It's practical, and it does mean that I can make sure that we do grow enough food in the beds that keeps us going in fruit and veg for most of the winter. So I tend to do a bed of garlic, a bed of onions. We've got several beds of strawberries, because we all like strawberries and they freeze really well. So we have strawberries on Christmas Day and through the winter. Down on the far end I've got a pomegranate tree which had flowers last year. Hopefully we'll get some pomegranates on it this year. We've got a big grapevine there which has the most disgusting grapes on it. They're really, really bitter, but the birds absolutely love them. So I'm going to keep that, but I'm also turning this greenhouse into a mini vineyard. So I'm going to have the grapes planted outside but growing inside the greenhouse, so hopefully they will be sweeter, because those are not. I can't recommend them.
Okay, so we don't know what grape variety
it
is. We can't we can't sort of
warn
people off.
No.
Oh, never mind.
I wanted to put in some unusual fruit plants, but ones that I could actually fill a whole bed with. So this plant here, I don't know if you recognise it.
I want to say I do, but you're going to tell me it's something that it isn't.
It's the favourite fruit of Queen Victoria, and it's a Chilean guava. It has tiny little pink fruits on it. It has beautiful flowers, little white bell flowers. The foliage smells nice, and then the little white flowers turn to small pink fruit. And if you remember the old Tutti Frutti sweets, they taste just like that. So it's a sort of hint of strawberry.
Did you know what they were going to taste like before you put them in?
No.
So it was a happy surprise that
Yes.
It tasted like a sweet shop.
Yes. Yeah, it was one of those plants that I thought, well, it'll fill a gap and we'll see what it's like. It also layers really well, so from just 3 small plants we've now got 2 beds of
Oh yes, you've
of
got some
plants
behind
there.
us as well. So yeah, you filled two.
Yeah, we can't get enough of it. It's so tasty.
I can
But,
imagine.
Louise and I then sat down and I asked her when she first decided to open her garden to the public.
Okay, so we started thinking about opening it up in the future when we moved in. So we thought it would be a good place to use. But then when COVID hit, the National Garden Scheme started looking for gardens that were big enough for groups of people to come and visit once the rules allowed. So as soon as we could, we opened up and we were allowed to have groups of 6 people at a time in the garden. We weren't supposed to speak to them, they couldn't come into the house, we couldn't do refreshments, all that sort of thing. But they were allowed to bring picnics, and so we had one memorable occasion on a rainy day where a couple of cars turned up into the field and a group of ladies got out, obviously out for a good catch-up, and they came into the garden and wandered around a little bit, and then I lost sight of them, and after a while I was starting to get a little bit concerned because their cars were still there but there was no sign of them. So I donned my mask and my hand sanitizer and I came traipsing down the garden, and I could hear them but I couldn't see them. So I thought I needed to locate them and make sure everything was okay, and realised that there is a big clump of bamboo that my son had hollowed out the centre of and turned it into a den with some tables and chairs, and the ladies were in there with their umbrellas and a bottle of Prosecco and a fantastic picnic, having an absolute riot of a time. And it was so good to hear the garden sort of full of laughter and people having great fun, and that spurred us on to carry on doing it.
That's brilliant. Isn't that fantastic? I mean,
fab.
I think had that not happened, maybe, you might have just sort of done it as a bit of a one-off or whatever, but having something like that and seeing people actually enjoying your garden and what you've got here is absolutely wonderful.
It made me realise that it's very important to always have somewhere to go and to have a facility open where you can escape from things. And I find a lot of people comment when they come to open gardens here, they comment that it's like a bit of a retreat or a bit of an escape from reality for a while, and I think that's important. But we do have a lot of groups come to visit that vary in size from 12 or 13 people up to 40 or 50 people, and they just come and use the garden for a morning or an afternoon, and I provide lots of refreshments, lots of tea and cake, and everybody has a nice time. We raise quite a lot of money through that for the nursing charities that they support. So the National Garden Scheme do an awful lot of work with health charities, in particular Marie Curie and Macmillan, and the money that is raised for those charities I know it's very greatly appreciated and goes to such a good cause. And it's never going to be a sort of perfect garden or a textbook garden. Some of the gardens that open for the garden scheme are unbelievably superb. I could never aim to be like that, but it is a garden that is suitable for all age groups. So quite often we get 3 or 4 generations of the same family coming. The children can run around and climb stuff and run through the borders, and there's plenty of places to sit and look at the view. So it's meant to be a garden for everyone to come and find something that they like. It could easily be a house and garden that you have to live up to, and that's not my way of doing things. I like somewhere that you can feel at home, and I like people to be able to come in and make themselves at home and not feel that they have to be on best behaviour or being something that they're not. You can just be yourself and find something in the garden that appeals to you, whether it's the more formal side of it or whether it's the wilder side. It doesn't matter. Hopefully there's something that everybody likes.
Louise then introduced me to her rescue chickens, who now roam freely in their rather unusual home, a repurposed tennis court.
So yeah, these are my pet chickens. Not all of them lay eggs, but that's not the point. They're all rescue hens. I've got 9 at the moment. Get 5 or 6 eggs a day, but it's just a bonus. They are really good fun. This is the old tennis court, but it's not ideally situated because there are some very beautiful mature trees growing right up against it, and so on a clay tennis court the surface was getting broken up by the roots of the trees, and it was either take the trees out or not use the tennis court. We decided we preferred trees to tennis, and so I commandeered this for my chickens, and they have a brilliant time. So there's where the surface is broken up, there are trees growing through, so they've got cover, they've got grass, they've got foliage, they've got greenery, and they're perfectly safe because of the netting fences and having a firm base underneath them. So it's been a good option.
Do you know what? It's ideal, isn't it? I've never really thought about a tennis court being a chicken pen before.
No.
But actually, when you think about it, it's ready made.
Yeah. So we call them the old girls at the old court.
Brilliant.
So they're very happy girls, and and a pleasure to have, and lay some absolutely superb eggs for making cakes.
Next to the tennis court was yet another pond, one with an intriguing past.
This pond here isn't linked to the others, but again it is spring fed. As you can see, the whole part of this garden is wet because you can't switch springs off. But one summer we had a long dry spell and the water level dropped, and just on the side here where we've got our little stone otter, we found some very substantial stone steps that lead right down into the water, and so we think it was probably a bathing pool.
Would you think, I mean, you'd never return it back to a bathing?
I'm not tempted to do that because we have a lot of wildlife in there. We have a lot of dragonflies. We were visited by a dragonfly expert last year. He came to one of the open gardens and was really excited to see the different types of dragonfly. And then he returned again later in the year, and so we're now part of the mapping of dragonflies throughout the UK. So we're now part of their overall UK map, showing which species are available in which areas, and it shows how climate is changing, but it also shows how water purity is changing. So it's a very interesting survey to be part of.
So we're coming down into the far, far reaches of the garden now, and this is presumably where the spring is.
This is where the springs are.
Wow.
Yeah.
We are wellies truly stuck in the mud. Very boggy. I mean, you can see the reflections sort of dappled through the grass of the water, can't you?
There's obviously been drainage problems here for centuries, so everywhere you dig there's stone or pipes, or channels, and we've done exactly the same. We've put in pipes, we've put in gravel. Nothing really has helped to drain it, and so the next thought is possibly putting in a little stream above ground so that we can just see when it's blocked and clear it rather than have to try and guess.
That would look lovely, wouldn't it?
I think it would be nice. It's just quite a big job to take on, and we haven't got round to it yet.
There we are.
All right, let's squelch our way down.
Ooh.
So
not to fall over.
We have this little area down here. Soon will be absolutely purple. So there are hundreds and hundreds of purple crocus.
Do you have bluebells?
Oh yeah. So down here. So this area here is where most of the bluebells are.
And are those the bees behind
Yes.
there, the hives? Yeah.
Yes, there's 20 or so hives.
Have you noticed a distinct flavour, should we say?
Yes. Okay, so you can tell what they've been eating, and you can tell from the pollen what they've been eating. So last year we had one hive that seemed to only have been eating the flowers off the lime tree, and it made the most unbelievable honey. It was such a fantastic flavour, but it was only one hive that had just really focused on that. We're not very close to rape fields, which does have quite a distinct taste of the honey, and I think if they've been eating the pollen from the oilseed rape, that's pretty much a dominant flavour. So we're lucky that we don't have much of that. We did have one hive that seemed to be eating a lot of heather, and we're not in the right sort of territory for heather, but we are quite close to a garden centre, and when I went there I realised that all their displays were edged with heather, and I think that's
brilliant,
where they've
isn't
been
it? So
going. Yeah,
they've just popped over to the garden centre.
Yeah,
and
it's only one field away.
that makes sense, doesn't it? Oh, that's so funny.
So we had some heather honey. We were so baffled. We couldn't work out where on earth they were getting it from, or what we were mistaking for heather.
You've told me about the inspiration to opening up the garden to the public. But how do you actually find it? I mean, it must be hard work.
Yes, it is hard work, and it takes a lot of preparation. It's just all hands on deck and just plough through it. But it's nice, it's worth doing. It's very worthwhile.
It was a privilege to wander through the enchanting garden with Louise today. Here I discovered that chickens enjoy playing in a tennis court, snowdrops can be mistaken for old-fashioned frilly knickers, monks once farmed fish here, bees enjoy a trip to the local garden centre, and Queen Victoria had a surprising fondness for Tutti Frutti sweets. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review. It really helps more people discover the show. And if you'd like to support us, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com. All links are in the episode notes, including details on today's gardens and how you can visit them. Until next time, keep on wandering.